All right, Alex, we're here in Atlanta. In a few minutes, we're going to head over to Invesco. We're going to sit down with Jay Batt. He's the athletic director of Georgia Tech, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to bring you here. Bobby Dodd Stadium is a very special place to me. My dad went here. This is the first team I really rooted for as a kid.
This is such a special place, and being here on campus, I'm in awe. I mean, just the size of it, the fact that it sits right in the middle of this great corporate market in Atlanta, great academic institution, great athletic.
Jay Batt is leaning into all of that because he's going to be a primary architect of what college sports looks like going forward.
He's got the goods. I mean, he played soccer at University of North Carolina. He worked with Nick Saban at the University of Alabama, and he is a prolific fundraiser. Can't wait.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Jay Batt.
Thank you.
Welcome to Atlanta, A-Rod.
I know, your hometown, baby.
My hometown.
I love
and,
Atlanta.
You know, probably a more welcoming audience than you would get at maybe Truist Park, maybe?
Not as bad as Fenway.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, it's all relative.
Yeah.
It's all relative.
I like the Braves.
So welcome everyone to this live recording of The Deal. We are very, very excited to be here. And it's an interesting process when we think about this show because we're trying to dive into this intersection of business, sports, and culture. In fact, I was told earlier that I too often refer to it as the white hot center of sports, business, and culture. But it was interesting to think about, all right, who do we want to talk to in Atlanta? Who do we want to talk to about college sports? And no one is at that aforementioned white hot center more than you. God bless you. There's a lot going on. We're going to get into all of that. Also, something that happens a lot on our show is I go through the normal process of, we work through representatives, and it's like, oh, all right, who do I know? Who knows Jay Batt? All right, let's get to him. Let's get the ask. And then this guy is like, oh yeah, I have a teammate from the 2009 World Series team who went to Georgia Tech. I'm just going to text him. And so you did, Mark Teixeira, and that's how you guys get connected. So tell me about that.
Yeah, well, Mark Teixeira, who went to Georgia Tech, recently got his degree, which I'm so proud of him. One of my favorite teammates of all time. And he introduced us, and we had a nice conversation. But, when you think about Mark Teixeira, when you think about value proposition about Georgia Tech, my question, Jay, is he the prototypical athlete that you have now a competitive advantage in this landscape?
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. I think, part of what makes Georgia Tech so special is it's this unique opportunity to go pro in whatever sport you want to be in. But also after that, the value of a Georgia Tech degree, the connection to alumni, the ability to be here in Atlanta is huge. And you mentioned Mark. Mark Teixeira is the perfect example of that, right? As we're going through this changing landscape, somebody with a pro background like Mark is an incredible advocate for us on campus as we're dealing with, our administration, other things that we're working through. Mark's been a tremendous friend and ally for us.
All right, so one of our favorite topics to talk about, and I will take this moment up top to shout out my parents who are in the audience, Dennis and Debbie Kelly.
Who also went to Georgia Tech.
That's right.
My dad went to Georgia Tech, so I took Alex all around Tech campus today, dragged him around. We went on the field at Bobby Dodd, lifelong dream accomplished. But my dad and I talk all the time about the state of college sports. Sure. I mean, every phone conversation we have, there's some new development. You're hyper aware of those. How do you even begin to understand where to go next? What's the thought process for you?
Yeah, so that's a fairly loaded question. I would say that you got to start with what's still the same, right? And then I'll talk about what's changing. But what's still the same is we still have great kids. We have great coaches. We're still attached to really, really incredible academic institutions. And I can speak firsthand at Georgia Tech. Our kids still go to class and get degrees. And they're the same degrees that you got. And they still, we say graduate now, not got out. But the student athletes that we deal with, they're still student athletes. What's changing is this sort of overlay of, the changing business of college athletics. And I think it's important that we talk about whether it's arranging our staff, right? We were one of the first folks to go out and hire what amounts to a general manager. We've got the proliferation of agents, right? Our student athletes, many of them have agents. Well, there needs to be a person to deal with that, right? We're going to have these rev share payments to be paid to student athletes. You've got to have a business operation, right, on your internal side to handle that. And sure as heck, you've got to have a whole bunch of legal help to manage that. So organizing your athletic department for that, And then I think just the talent you have to surround yourself with, right? It's not the same as it was 10 or 15 years ago, whether it's the athletic director chair, needing more business acumen, more ability to manage a larger budget. All that's really important. Still anchored in the fact that college athletics is essential to the fabric of higher education. It's essential to what it means, not for student athletes only, but for every student. And I think, that there's such value to the overall student experience to what college athletics brings.
So Rick Pitino recently said, I don't know if some of you folks saw, I was shocked. He said, we're not going to look at one high school student or recruit this year. Now, they get the money, right? But they're not going to have what you had in North Carolina, what you had at Georgetown, the memories, the growth. I mean, you guys remember when you were in college, it was 4 years. Today, you show up there as a free agent when you're 23, 24. How do you, A, defend against that? And how do you play offense being an institution with an academic background like Georgia Tech?
Yeah, so I would say, as we move into the next era of intercollegiate athletics, this revenue share, post-House settlement.
This is that, just to remind everyone, this is the House settlement
Right.
that is going to dictate that colleges have to share revenue with their athletes, right? Is that the simplest way? How would you put it most simply?
I think it's the simplest way to explain it. There's two tranches, right? There's a $2.8 billion settlement for back damages for student athletes, and then there's the forward-facing,
Right.
which is, the ability to create some structure and stability for revenue sharing moving forward.
Yeah.
But as those two things kind of move forward, I think there's going to be less and less separation across the overall landscape as far as, what one student athlete, a certain profile might be from given institution to the other, as there's a new revenue sharing number that's, kind of ubiquitous across all of the institutions. And I think a high academic institution like Georgia Tech in a thriving major metro like Atlanta, where real third-party NIL deals will be highly valued and available, with an alumni network that will make a difference when you finish, that's going to go back to being important, right? We spend all kinds of time recruiting great coaches, right? Surrounding our student athletes with great, call them life skills for a long time, total person program, but those sort of support mechanisms, and then great coaches and good facilities, that makes a difference. There was a time there where maybe that didn't factor as much. You saw institutions pause facility projects, right? You saw folks say, hey, we're not going to go and hire some new coach. We're going to make an investment in NIL. As we move into the next era, some of that spread's going to kind of tighten up. And I think what you will see is we're going to go back to a place that an opportunity to come to Georgia Tech, graduate with that degree, that's going to matter more than maybe it has in the past 3, 4, 5 years.
So it sounds a little bit like you're going to have your NCAA collective bargaining agreement that we have in the pros to just bring some structure around it.
It will be that the House settlement will be the opportunity to create a stable way in which we can provide even more to the student athletes. Frankly, I think it's really important that we say that. This House settlement, but it also creates stability, it creates fairness, it creates the ability to manage for long-term stability for the student athletes.
As we look forward, one of your additional responsibilities, as it were, is you're going to be one of 10 athletic directors, I believe, across the entire country who, post-House settlement, is really going to be charged with architecting this new landscape. How do you ensure that the Georgia Tech model is successful, but that also other colleges who may not have this academic profile or who don't have the benefit of being in a city like Atlanta, how do they win as well?
I think that's what makes college athletics great, is that it's institutions all across the country with a bunch of different profiles. We have a bunch of really smart people in that room. We have a bunch of really committed people in that room who've been working really, really hard. Not today, not tomorrow. We've been working for months to lay out the groundwork. And I think that the desired outcome of that is, let's have something that's stable. Let's have something that's clear. Let's have something that we can operate within going forward that will provide us that clarity and stability for student athletes to gain more. At the end of the day, there's never been a better time to be a student athlete. I can say that from firsthand experience, right? There's never been a better time. At the end of the day, they'll be, we'll have this rev share pool. We'll have the ability for student athletes in a organized system to earn third-party NIL deals. We'll have there'll be more scholarships, right? You see headlines all the time of athletic departments adding huge amounts of scholarships and opportunities, right? And we'll continue to offer all the benefits that we always have, right? Whether it's the medical coverage, whether it's the academic support, all those parts and pieces that go with it, they're just going to be on top of all those things that we've already been doing. And so I think that's probably the biggest takeaway, right? Is we're building that system. And listen, like, it's a bunch to figure out and a bunch to sort through, but I think we're building something that is sustainable.
All right, we're gonna do some role playing.
Okay.
Because I took Alex over to Tech, and he walked around. This guy's eyes were as big as saucers. We go onto the baseball field. Of course, we're taking photos. We're talking to the coach. We're doing all that. I'm telling you right now, if you approach this guy and like, hey, you want to come play baseball at Georgia Tech? You got some eligibility.
I would have to pay him.
Yeah.
Deal. Let's go.
So let's do it. Like, what are you going to say to him to get him to come to Tech over Miami?
I think it goes back to exactly what we talked about listen, I think no one needs to be naive enough to think that in the future, revenue sharing is going to play a part of that, right? So that's certainly part of the discussion. But the most important part about that is going to be about fit. It's going to be about future. It's going to be about what we're going to do to help you achieve your dreams and grow. And then I think we talk a lot about at Georgia Tech. This isn't a 4-year proposition. Certainly in the transfer portal era, maybe it's not. But you are going to finish and get that degree, and that's a 40-year win. At the end of the day, that above and beyond part, right? That's going to be the differentiator.
And so I'm looking at March Madness right now, and we're sort of convening around this idea. And the transfer portal has radically changed the talent flow among teams.
Sure.
And we talk a lot on this show about talent. How do you keep those students? Like,
Sure.
and is that as much of a challenge as it seems like from the outside?
It's a fair question. I think retention of your roster is an all-the-time thing. And, whether it's the transfer portal's open or not, you've got to be proactive. You've got to find different ways to add value, and you've got to be in the game. And I think that's something on the Georgia Tech front we have been really active in, right? I think, anytime you look at any sort of business, zoom out from college athletics, right? You go through a period of massive change. 2 things are important. You're well capitalized, and you've got really smart people. You've invested in that talent to negotiate for whatever that marginal increases you can bring. And so, we brought an individual from the Chicago Bears on board back in December to help us manage through the football portal and oversee our revenue sharing enterprise. We're in the process of bringing on an individual to help on the basketball fronts, one for men and for women, by the way, because I think they're both, really important. And particularly the women's game continues to grow at leaps and bounds. You've got to find really intentional ways to retain that talent.
One of the things you have to do is recruit and raise capital.
For sure.
What are some of the things that you've done and continue to do that you can share with our group and our listeners that they can take home? Because everyone at some point has to raise capital
Sure.
or recruit great talent, and you've done both.
Well, that's kind of you to say. I think the most important thing is and everybody has their own different way about it, right? But I think the most important thing is to value and constantly work on genuine relationships. I think it's often forgotten that really my value prop or my business plan is so good that, of course, someone's going to buy this or invest in this or give us money because, my goodness, we're winning games or we want to win games or whatever it might be. People give to people. People invest in people. And so being available, being part of that, investing in those relationships, so that when the time comes for that ask, it's not the first thing you've heard of them, right? Like it's important to be there. So that genuine relationship I've found to be huge.
So talk a little bit on that point of fundraising, Jay.
Yep.
Any good college president is going to tell you that one of the best and easiest ways to find a donor's heart is through sports.
Yeah.
And yet that doesn't say, it's not universally shared. It sounds like, and I was talking to Coach Key about this morning, he and you and the president of Georgia Tech are totally aligned. How do you make sure that it stays that way, and what happens if it doesn't?
Alignment institutionally is the most important thing that you can have in an athletic department. So the kind of vision and the emphasis from your institution's president is the most important thing. President Angel Cabrera here at Georgia Tech, he's one of the most pragmatic, visionary leaders you could ever want as an athletic director. But that athletic director, working with the president your governing board, down to your coaches, that alignment's huge. And it's not just your president, right? It's the overall academic, kind of the entire community. Part of it is it has to be valuable to every student, not just to your student athletes, right? The role of college athletics has to be a part of the overall institution. And, I've talked a lot about that relationships are built on shared experiences, right? And so part of the role I think college athletics plays in an institutional life cycle is, right? Like, think about all those memories you had from college, right? I remember when. I can't tell you how many fundraising conversations start with, I remember the miracle on Techwood when Georgia Tech beat Florida State and we blocked the punt and we, that shared experience ties together alums to the institution, right? And a lot of times that engagement doesn't just necessarily end on the athletics front, right? I think I've raised, I don't know how much over my career, but a lot of those gifts are often starting points to what that scholarship that you give in the School of Business where you graduated from becomes.
Yeah.
And to your point about creating value, that's the way you create value, is those donor relationships that go beyond. And then the other part is, the most important work at Georgia Tech is being done in our labs, in our classrooms, our researchers, GTRI. That's the most important work, right? But at the end of the day, the way that we are able to share that publicly is through the athletic story that we tell, whether it's the, simple spot that's in the game. We won awesome Aer Lingus Classic, right?
Yes.
In the summer, we're in Ireland, we go to Dublin, Florida State, last second kick, win the game. It's awesome.
Week zero.
You're
essentially the only game in town, right?
Yep. Interestingly, right, there was, 3 or 4 million people that watched that game, which was awesome. Yep. But we had 2 billion on social media within one day.
Wow.
2 billion. There is nothing that we can do. There's no investment on the institutional front that can tell our story better than that. And I think, President Cabrera, he fully embraces that, invests in that, and that's what's got us positioned so well, right, to move forward into this new era.
And so when you think about a lot of that change, Jay, one of the things that is just front and center is this whole notion of conference realignment.
Sure.
You have experienced it firsthand with some maybe unexpected new members of your conference who are nowhere near the Atlantic coast. I'm thinking about, SMU. I'm thinking about Stanford and Cal. Where do we go on that? And what happens? What's the right thing to happen from your perspective?
That's a great question. First and foremost, we've got to keep the kids in mind, right? And so whatever we go with that, we have to be sure that we're supporting them through all that journey. And I'll tell you, I think the ACC did a really good job recruiting members that made sense from a institutional profile, commitment to athletics, right? Those are long plane flights. I did one to LA and back last week to watch our women compete at UCLA. But we're taking those steps to support them through it. As far as the conference realignment landscape, listen, I can only speak about the ACC because that's where we're in. We've recently been really innovative, right? We've gone to unequal revenue distribution based on on-field success and TV viewership. And so part of what you can do, Jason, is you can be intentional about how you organize and arrange different things, right? We're going to we'll play our Georgia game for football on a Friday afternoon, right? Last year, we played that game on a Friday evening in Athens, 8 overtimes. It's not painful or anything. At the end of that, we had 9 million people watch that game, right? Part of why that happened is that we intentionally organized, worked with our partners in Athens to say, hey, we should do that game on a Friday night. ABC picks it up. Part of that is being intentional about how do you organize that schedule? What are you doing on that front to create value?
Yeah, Jay, it's incredible. I mean, my head is spinning because this is not what I grew up with. I remember back in the day, you had a guy like Herschel Walker. I'm dating myself a little bit, but he went to Georgia, and you knew what high school he came from. He's going to be there for at least 3 years. You knew who the coach was going to be. You know which conference. You know what TV. Now you don't know anything. I guess my question is, and this is something that I'm struggling with. I'm a parent of 2 daughters, sure. And one is a sophomore at Michigan, one is a junior in high school. And I'm thinking if someone like you showed up at my house, I love that they get to share in the economics. That's always great.
Yep.
What I don't love is no commitment, no loyalty, and an optional education. How do we give them the resources or make them earn the resources, but also give them the chores that make this country great? Like the fact that you got to work for it.
Well, I think, part of what will be great as we move into this next era of college athletics is student athletes are going to have more and more opportunity to earn that third-party NIL, right? There'll be financial gain and benefit that go with that. And so that part will be enhanced, Alex. I think it's important. But, part of that, I think what makes higher education, college athletics great is you do still get, even if the window gets compressed, right? Even if the window gets compressed and maybe somebody transfers, you still get all those intrinsic values of resiliency, right? You fail on a stage in front of thousands of people. Way better than I do, right? You have the ability to be a great teammate, teamwork, all those parts and pieces that go with what does college athletics do, even if it gets microwaved, right, at times. But there's still as many stories as there are of student athletes that leave. There's just as many as the ones that stick it out, right? And so it's our job in college athletics to build those environments that support the kids to make those good decisions, to see the value in the higher education part of the equation. Listen, again, not going to be naive enough to not say there's part of it that's going to come down to what's the rev share and all the other parts that work with it. But that's our job. And that's when I come to see you guys, we'll send the coaches first, but at the end of the day, I think it's important we talk as much about that as anything.
Yeah.
All right. You ready for rapid fire?
I'm ready.
All right. Let's do it. All right. So the only rule is keep it tight.
Okay.
I'll start, and then Alex will pick up. What's one word to describe your deal-making style?
Direct.
What's more important, your gut or data?
Both.
A little bit of a hedge fund.
Who's your dream deal-making partner?
Nick Saban?
Ooh, good one.
What's the best piece of advice you ever received on deal making or business?
Always be honest.
What's the worst advice you've been given?
Do the rapid fire question thing.
You can only watch one sport for the rest of your life. Which one is it?
I'm a football guy.
American football.
American football.
All right.
Good, Claire.
It's a global show.
I like
It
it.
is,
Yeah,
it is.
absolutely.
And
he paid,
clarify.
you know.
Yeah. And you played soccer.
Yeah.
What team do you want to see win a championship more than any?
Georgia Tech.
Well, I mean, yeah, of course.
That's the easiest thing. That's the best question yet. Yes. Yeah.
All right, what's your advice, someone listening who wants to have a career just like yours?
You got to do it for the right reason, right? You got to love the enterprise. Don't do it to end up in one of these chairs. Do it because you love the enterprise. You love helping student athletes.
All right. Well, this has been a huge amount of fun. I've been waiting for a long time for us to come to Atlanta together. And
You've never been happier, by the way.
I know. It was
I don't know if
great.
it's your parents, Georgia, maybe mom cooked for you a little Southern.
I had a great day.
I've never seen you smile so much.
I know. I had a great day, and I'm so happy to be here with both of you. And it's great to be able to say on stage on our podcast, "To hell with Georgia." Thank you so much, Jay Batt.
I love it.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it.